Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 4, Episode 20, The Smelly Car. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing okay. Still fired up from the last couple weeks. Well, what am I saying? Last couple weeks. The events of the last frickin' decade of this country, really. Fired up and putting it into action. I'm encouraged by how many people I'm friends with and I live around who are organizing, and it's really inspiring because I certainly was kind of in that frustration haze and paralysis, if you will, because I just felt so helpless because things are just getting worse and worse. And speaking of, we had a mass shooting at a 4th of July parade. People celebrating our freedom and our country get gunned down. I mean, you can't get any more American than that at this point, right? But all we can do is keep organizing, keep yourself engaged and aware, and, fight as best you can, whatever you can do. I know that for me, what I struggle with is kind of getting fatigued and really emotionally spent from reading the news, from looking at images of horrific scenes of either a mass shooting or some 10-year-old girl who got raped but now can't get an abortion in Ohio. I mean, horrific things that are just going on in this country that people are like cheering for. It's sickening. Anyway, the bright spot, I think this banter is going to be combination how I'm dealing with rage and the bright spot that I'm trying to cling to in those moments where I do need a break. And this week it's been Wimbledon. I love tennis. I love to watch tennis. I do not play. I grew up watching it because my father was a huge tennis fan. My brother played, and we all used to watch all the Grand Slams together. Wimbledon is special because it's during the summertime and I just love everything about it. I love seeing the grounds. I love even the theme music that NBC has. It's like do 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 do. Oh, it just gives me chills. I love it. I love everything about it. And my favorite player, Rafa Nadal, is still in it. He had such an epic match yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was so intense, so nerve-wracking. At a certain point, I thought he was going to just retire from the match because he looked like he was in pain. He's got some abdominal muscle, something going on there and some pain there. So it looked like he might not make it through the match, but he pulled it out. And that's why I love him. I have such a respect for professional tennis players because you're out there by yourself. It's all up to you. You don't have anyone to tag in and take over for you. You have just yourself. And I'm talking about singles, obviously. In doubles, you have a partner, but still, it's the same mentality, right? Like you're either with you and your partner or with just yourself. You have to go through those mental struggles and you can't really take a break because you're the only one out there. And it's just, I don't know, mentally, it's such a tough game. And that's most of what sports, competing in sports is about, is your mental toughness. So for me, a non-athlete, this sport just amazes me every time, and I have such respect for these players. So Rafa's still in it. I'm super excited. With that, let's get into the episode. The Smelly Car's synopsis from my coffee table book is as follows. Jerry's car is permanently tainted by a valet's bad body odor. So, unable to sell it, he abandons it on the street with the keys in the ignition. The foul aroma attaches itself to Elaine and leads her to lose her new boyfriend. George is fascinated to learn that he drove Susan Ross to lesbianism. Kramer has an affair with Susan's girlfriend, effectively driving her away from lesbianism. This episode was written by Larry David and Peter Melman, so a co-write between two fantastic writers. We start out outside of this restaurant. Jerry and Elaine have just had dinner and they're waiting for the valet to bring Jerry's car. Jerry is basically acting like a 5-year-old and dangling his scarf in front of Elaine's face. Is this bothering you? No, not at all. The valet comes and gets Jerry's keys. Elaine asks him to please hurry. Jerry makes fun of her. Oh, please hurry. Look at you. Look at what you've become. What? I haven't become anything. Oh, Carl can't wait a few minutes. I don't want to keep him waiting. And Jerry says, look, he'll like you more. That's impossible. An elderly couple walks by. The wife is berating her husband for picking his teeth at the table. It's disgusting. Leave me alone. Jerry remarks, yeah, I'm going to get married real soon. Elaine says that Jerry needs to drop her at Carl's place. He's like, what a racket. I take you to dinner and then I get to drop you off at his place. And Elaine ends that with, and he gets the rest of my chicken. The car pulls up and Jerry asks, well, is tonight the night for sex? If you guys didn't get what he was asking. Elaine says, never know. Oh, baby doll. Elaine and Jerry get in the car and drive off. I like everything about this scene. The banter between Jerry and Elaine is so fun. It's so breezy. Even Jerry's infantile dangling of his scarf in Elaine's face, it serves no purpose except to just show their relationship. And I also love that Elaine tries to just ignore it. And there's not a hint of sexual chemistry anymore. And I've said this many times, but I am so glad we are past that. That old couple passing and bickering, it's great. Again, it's just an aside. It has nothing to do with the plot. Its entire purpose is to illustrate where Jerry and Elaine are in their lives. Jerry says something, but Elaine just kind of looks at them like, oh man, that sucks. So I just like that. They're not anywhere near wanting to get married and settle down. They're just enjoying their single life. JLD's choice here is so fun. I mean, she's in a great mood. She's almost giddy. And that's because she's planning on getting some action later. I mean, there's no other way to put it. She gets a free dinner from Jerry, and then she's driven to her boyfriend's place to get laid. I don't know. As Jerry says, it's quite a racket. Good for you, Elaine. Next, we're in Jerry's car. Right away, you can tell something's off. Jerry asks Elaine, boy, do you smell something? Do I smell something? What am I, hard of smelling? Of course I smell something. She figures it out. It's BO. The valet must have had BO. Jerry can't believe it. The whole car smells because usually once the B goes, the O goes with it. Oh, it's so terrible. They stick their heads out the window. They sit back in the car, take one breath, and they have to stick their heads out of the window again. It's so pungent. This is a funny scene. Not much to say about it. I love bad smell acting. That might sound weird. It's very specific, but it always makes me laugh when people make those faces and they kind of, they have to exhale and it's always so fun to me. And both Jerry and Julia did a great job with their bad smell acting in this scene. Next, we are at Carl's place. Elaine and Carl are sitting on the couch, very cozy. They're making chit-chat. Elaine finds out he skis. She can't believe it. I'm a great skier. He also pillages and plunders. Oh. Elaine is getting the wine glasses out of the way. She wants to get down to business. They start kissing, and when Elaine kind of embraces him and starts nuzzling his neck, we see Carl take a whiff of her hair, and ooh, he looks disgusted. This is a super short scene. We see flirty Elaine here, and dare I say, horny Elaine? I mean, from the first second, she is on a mission. That flirty conversation while putting her wine glass down. She takes Carl's glass from him, puts it down. She's very deliberate, and I love it. I love seeing a woman just take charge like this. And, okay, superficial Shivani alert. But really, is this who Elaine dates? I mean, we've discussed this before. I've said it before on the podcast. In fact, in the last episode, I will say contributor Greg started it, but I did agree with him. Elaine is a total 10, and then she's paired up with these duds. It's not fair, and I only point this out because of the disparity with the caliber of women Jerry and even George land. I mean, it makes no sense. Come on, let's give Elaine some hotties. I think she gets a few down the road, but yeah, even this guy, I'm like, come on, really, Elaine? You could do better. Next, we're at the video store. We finally see George and Kramer. George needs to return a video, and Kramer's just going to poke around. George gets in line and sees a couple of women from behind, and they're holding hands. We hear this voiceover, and George is so excited. Oh, his lucky day, a lesbian sighting. He thinks about why they're so fascinating. It's because they don't want us. I gotta respect that. Well, the women turn around, and turns out it's Susan with a girlfriend. George tries not to get noticed, but then Susan calls for him. And this is one of my favorite sounds of the entire series. It makes me laugh every time. Susan introduces her girlfriend to George. Her name is Mona. George, so dumb, gingerly puts his hand out to shake her hand. She's perfectly pleasant, and she says, well, I'll leave you two to catch up. She looks George up and down a couple of times. She's a little suspicious. The actress who plays Mona is Vivica Davis. She's been in Castaway and EdTV. I did notice she doesn't have any credits past 2001. I think she's funny. I think she is really funny, especially in this opening moment. The little look she gives George, it says it all, and I think she does a great job with it. As soon as Mona's walked away, Susan knows. She walks up to George, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I just didn't expect to see you, all. And you didn't expect me to be holding hands with a woman. George just tries to say, oh my God, he's so fine with it. He's cool. You know, I've always encouraged this. Who do you think you're talking to? I know who I'm talking to. He asks, how long she's been going that way. And Susan says, well, it's pretty much been going on since she and George broke up. Okay, I think that's fantastic. George is really just trying to lay it on thick. He's fine with everything. Nice. That's very nice. Meanwhile, we see Kramer practicing his golf swing and gets Mona's attention. Susan notices that George is returning Rochelle. Oh, lots of nudity in that, huh? George gets called by the video store clerk, and Susan says goodbye. It was good to see him. And he says, yeah, good luck with the whole thing there. The clerk ends up trying to charge George with $2 extra for not rewinding Rochelle. And Kramer says, look, just keep it another day, rewind it, and you'll save $1. So that's what George does. What could that hurt? Next, we are at Jerry's apartment. Elaine is there, and they're tying up magazines. I don't remember this activity from the 90s. I'm wondering, is this what you had to do to maybe recycle magazines? But at any rate, they are busy with stacks of magazines and tying them with string. And he's talking about the car. He's saying, look, overnight, I would think the smell would be gone. He goes down and it's like a punch in the face. It's as if it gained strength throughout the night. Elaine says instead of that smell in his car, she'd rather smell skunk. She doesn't mind horse manure. She loves horse manure. Jerry says that he went to the car wash and they want $250 to detail his car. He's not going to pay for that. He's going to go down to the restaurant and demand that they pay for it. Elaine changes the subject and asks Jerry, if a guy says he has to get up early, what does that mean? It means he's lying. Oh, well, that is what Carl told her the night before. And she says, come on, I know guys have to get up early. I've seen them on the street early in the morning. All right, Jerry relents and says, okay, sometimes we do actually have to get up early, but a man will always trade sleep for sex. And Elaine asks, is it possible I'm not as attractive as I think I am? Jerry says, anything's possible. Kramer enters. He's got a paper in his hand. He's pissed off about Steinbrenner. Elaine exits to the bathroom where, from what I can tell, I think she's just looking in Jerry's magnifying mirror to maybe see if she is as attractive as she thinks she is. Anyway, Kramer's just going on and on about Steinbrenner. As Jerry walks by Kramer, he kind of sniffs and smells something. Ooh, you stink. Why did you go take a shower? And Jerry says, I showered. Oh, but wait, since he showered, he's been in the car. He figures out that the stench from his car attaches itself to people. And then Elaine figures it out. If it attached itself to you, that's why Carl said he had to get up early, because he thinks I stink. Oh, she is horrified. Jerry, he thinks I have BO. Me. George buzzes. Kramer's confused. Well, what happened? My car stinks is what happened, and it's destroying the lives of everyone in its path. My take on this scene, in regards to the smells Elaine would rather smell, I'm totally with her on skunk. I don't find it that offensive. You smell it every now and then when you're driving down the road. I'm just kind of like, whoa, it's strong, but it's not one of those smells where I'm like, oh my God, I have to close the windows. This is gross. I'm definitely not with her on horse manure. No, sir. My daughter takes horseback riding lessons. And first of all, the whole horseback riding world is totally new to me. My daughter has been obsessed with horses since she could walk. So last year I finally said, okay, let's try this out. She loves it. It's wonderful. She loves it. But oh my gosh, I always make sure, because of how the horse manure smell, it does attach itself to you. I always make sure to not wear any clothes that matter anything to me while I'm there. Right now it's not as bad because they keep the barn doors open, but when it's enclosed, whew, I cannot stand that smell. I'd rather smell the BO. That couplet of dialogue between Elaine and Jerry, the whole, is it possible I'm not as attractive as I think I am? Anything's possible. It is brilliant. I love it. It's so simple. And we get a taste of egotistical Elaine here, and I love it. She knows her power. She knows her prowess, and I'm glad she's owning it, Elaine, and she's not wrong. She is a 10. But apparently she dates like 4s and 5s, whatever. Another great moment is that terror in her realization that Carl thinks she has BO. I love the line, Jerry, he thinks that I have BO, me, as if her having BO should never be a possibility. I love the way she delivers that line. Next, we're in Jerry's car. George is with him this time, and he can't believe it. This is unbelievable BO. George asks, could he have done it? No. It was definitely the valet. No, he's talking about driving Susan to lesbianism. No, suicide maybe, but not lesbianism. And he mentions how Susan said that Mona, her girlfriend, has never been with a guy. And then he can't even keep going. Oh, this is beyond BO. It's BBO. And George admits, he finds Susan more appealing now that she's a lesbian. He never would have broken up with her if he knew that about her. Jerry's confused and wants to figure it out. On second thought, I think it's the combination of the smell and just how confusing George's statement is. He's like, I can't deal with this right now. Next, we're at the restaurant. They pull up and Jerry sees the BO valet and tells him to go back, I'll park it, go back. Thank you, no. In the lobby, he's talking to the manager of the restaurant. The manager is not really believing him, said, perhaps the odor is coming from you because I can smell you now. That's from the car. Jerry tells him, you go and smell the car. He doesn't have time for that. And George makes a suggestion, which I honestly think is the better suggestion. Go to the source, smell the valet. So we see the manager out in the car, and he's in pain from smelling the BO and admits, okay, it stinks. He pleads for Jerry to open the door and let him out. Jerry demands, well, you're going to pay for the cleaning, right? Yes, $50. I'll give you $50. I don't think that's going to cut it. Okay, whatever you want. I want half, 125. So Jerry lets him out. And George notices someone stole Rochelle from the car. Well, you left the window open. Well, they had to air out the car. That's why the window was open. George demands that the manager pays for it. I'm not paying for that. Next, we're back at Carl's apartment. Elaine is explaining about Jerry's stinky car, how the BO went from the valet to the car to me. It clings to everything. But I showered and I shampooed, so that's a relief. They hug, and Carl backs away immediately. It's still there. No, it can't be. And she's trying to smell her hair. She doesn't smell it. I shampoo, I rinsed, I repeated. It's still there. I can smell it. Elaine keeps coming at him. He's trying to get away, ends up cornering him, like putting her hair in his face. And he's like, no, please. This is such a short scene, but I love the journey of the tone in the scene. Elaine is explaining, making a joke in the beginning, it's flirty. And then it all turns very quickly. He's super disgusted, and she's aggressively trying to get him to smell her hair again because she can't smell anything. That ending up in the corner, like, it always makes me laugh. I just love how he's like, no, please. So dramatic. Next, we are in the video store. The clerk is looking up Rochelle. Susan enters to meet George, but she doesn't have much time. He asks the question, was it him that drove her to lesbianism, her metamorphosis? The clerk says it's going to be $98 for Rochelle. What $98? That's what I said, $98. George is so upset. Of course he doesn't have all the money. He needs to borrow $35 from Susan. Thanks, I'll pay you back. Yeah, sure. So he asks, was it me? Don't be ridiculous, Susan says. This is what you wanted to talk to me about? Susan has to go, but George has one more question. If she and Mona were to dance, how do they decide who leads? Do they discuss it beforehand? Do they take turns? Susan just glares at him and says, you're an idiot. George defends himself. What? It's a legitimate sociological question. She's got to go. She turns to leave, but not before coming back and telling George, you stink. You need a bath. Oh, that's from the car. Then we briefly see a little scene where Mona meets Kramer on the street and they embrace passionately. The next few scenes I'm calling the de-stinking montage. We see Jerry at the car wash. He's listening to the guy explaining in great detail how they will extract the stink from the car. We see Elaine sitting in a chair in a salon, listening to the same sort of spiel from a salon worker, lots of detail to rid her hair of the stink. And he says, if that doesn't work, we have one last resort. Tomato sauce. Yeah. We see both Jerry's car and Elaine's hair getting soaped down and cleaned. When the car's done, Jerry hands over the money, gets in the car, takes a deep breath. Oh no, it still smells. It still smells. Then we see Elaine at Carl's door. She's bent over for Carl to smell her hair, and he says, it still smells. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment. George can't believe it. How can it still smell after all that? Jerry says he's going to sell the car. And George is like, really? Just because of that? And he says, you don't know what I'm up against. Even Superman would be helpless against this. And he's going to take anything he can get for it. George says, well, maybe I'll buy it. Are you crazy? This isn't just an odor. You need a priest to get rid of this thing. Elaine enters. I still smell. You see? George's like, come on, all right, let me smell you. But before he can, they hear Susan in the hallway pounding on Kramer's door. They ask her what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on. First, he vomits on me. Then he burns down my father's cabin. And now he's taken Mona away from me. He stole your girlfriend? She's in love with him. Susan exits, and George says, wow, I drive them to lesbianism. He brings them back and exits out the door. Kramer calls and asks if Susan is still there. Jerry's like, what did you do? I don't know. He comes in and he explains how he and Mona got together. She's a golf teacher, so he went for a lesson. And, something happened between them. But he's more excited that she's a golf teacher and she's already taken 6 strokes off his game. And that's the least of what you've accomplished. Kramer says he's going to see her tonight, and he asks to borrow Jerry's jacket. Elaine has to ask Kramer, wait, hang on a second. This woman has never been with a man her entire life. He just shrugs and says, I'm Kramer. All right, side note, I almost made this a jacket watch moment because he borrows Jerry's jacket, but upon further reflection, my judgment call was, it wasn't a focal point of the storyline, so I did not include it. And in case any of you are wondering, I did say something about a jacket. It doesn't warrant a jacket watch incident. So we got that important business out of the way. Let's move on. Next, we're at Monk's. George is trying to make Susan feel better. He says, you're beautiful. You'll meet other girls. You're a very eligible lesbian. And he even admits to her he can't get her out of his mind. She's just so hip. And then he sees Allison, his ex-girlfriend, and he tries to hide. But she sees him. George, you owe me $50. Oh, right. I don't have it on me right now. He introduces Allison to Susan, and, she's taken. I love your vest. Thank you. There's instant chemistry between the ladies, and George just kind of has to accept it. Next, we're at the dealership. Kramer is telling Jerry about his date and how everything was perfect, but then all of a sudden she says she's got to go. She's got to get up early. Then Jerry figures out, it was because you were wearing my jacket. The stink. The beast. Meanwhile, the dealership guy exclaims in disgust after sitting in the car. Tells Jerry, I can't sell this car. Ba 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 ba. Boom ba dum boom 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 boom. We got a Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection here. The guy who plays this sales guy at the dealership is Robert Noble, and he also played a handyman at Yale for one short scene in Gilmore Girls. It's when Rory goes back to campus early and he's fixing her radiator. So there you go. Another Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection. Jerry is so frustrated. He's just yelling, "This thing, it's got to be stopped." When we see Elaine at the salon, she says to the guy, "Sauce me." Then we see Jerry pull his car up to a curb near a guy sitting on a stoop, very clearly leaves the keys in the car, sort of presents it to this man. The guy kind of gets up, looks around, he gets in, and then is immediately grossed out by the smell, of course. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Nothing makes your home cozier than the pleasant aroma of a burning candle. Vanilla cupcake, fresh cut roses, lemon lavender. These are some of the most popular candle scents on the market today. But what if your favorite smells are a tad unorthodox? If you enjoy unconventional smells, not celebrated by the likes of Yankee Candle Company, then you need to shop with us, Stanky Candle Company. Enjoy your stinky little habit with our handmade candles. Don't be ashamed if your taste in smells isn't traditional like your book club friends. Embrace what makes you unique. Visit Stanky Candle Company and see what we have to offer. Scents like skunk, horse manure, wet vitamins, microwaved broccoli, morning breath, oily scalp, artisanal butt, and many more. I grew up on a farm, so for me, the smell of horse manure is like a warm hug. But now that I live in the suburbs, I don't get to enjoy it anymore. Thanks to Stanky Candle Company, I have horseshit candles all around my house. Stanky Candle Company also offers special blend candles, which combine 2 or more stenches into one rank candle. We've made combinations like gasoline and garbage, triple rubber, which combines the scents of rubber cement, a fresh eraser, and a used condom. And new to our special blend collection, Dairy Dutch Oven, which mixes the odor of a lactose-intolerant fart trapped in linen. Stop feeling ashamed of what you like to smell. Order your candles from Stanky Candle Company and inhale every wicked funk your heart desires. Stanky Candle Company. All the stink you can handle in a candle. And we're back. For the extras of this episode, there was an interview with Heidi Sweetberg, who plays Susan Ross, and I wanted to mention what she said because I really liked this. She said she always appreciated that scripts by Peter Melman included jokes for her to deliver. She said it's very gratifying. She was usually the straight performer, but in this episode, she gets laughs, and she said it was such a pleasure to do that, and Peter Melman always did that for her. Okay, moving on to Contributor Corner. Greg sent in some thoughts, and this is what he had to say. This is my favorite Seinfeld episode ever, so I had to send in my thoughts this week. Okay, it's tied with the non-fat yogurt for favorite. I love everything about this simple yet hilarious plot in which body odor of a valet destroys the lives of everyone it touches. I love the opening scene between Elaine and Jerry where they discuss her new relationship in a playful way. They are full-on platonic friends, almost like brother and sister, and I'm here for it. The way Jerry teases Elaine and she just laughs along is adorable. The mood quickly shifts once they enter the smelly car. Yeah, I agree with you, Greg, and I think I said that early on. Yeah, the platonic relationship, the teasing relationship, it's so much fun to watch. Next, Greg says, Elaine delivers my favorite line of the episode. Do I smell something? What am I, hard of smelling? It's such a throwaway joke that is surrounded by a million other one-liners in this episode, but it makes me laugh so hard. The panic as they stick their heads out the window trying to get fresh air is great. The face acting is at an all-time pinnacle here. Yes, I think what you mean by face acting is what I mean by bad smell acting. I love it. It always makes me laugh. And I think I've incorporated it into my own life. Whenever I smell something bad, I have to kind of wrinkle my face just the way that they do. Like I said, great performances for Smelling Something Bad by Julia and Jerry. Greg goes on to say, I hate this guy who Elaine is dating. This Pillsbury doughboy in a vest should be so goddamn lucky to get this woman. You're turning your nose up at her? She should be turning her nose up at your whole being. And she has to come to your place every time? You're lazy too. Take your sweater vest and shitty art and abacus decor and get out of our lives. Oh, funny. I agree with you, Greg. It's just, the very sensitive part of me, the whole everyone's beautiful part of me wants to be like, well, maybe he's a really nice guy. But you bring up a good point. Why the fuck is she going to his place every time? Like, and he's just like, does he take her to dinner ever? I mean, seriously. But this might be the phase in Elaine's life. And unfortunately, we women do this where we don't think we're good enough, maybe. It's that tweet I quoted last week where it's like, men seem to have all this confidence. Women who should have the confidence don't. So these matches happen that just kind of don't make sense. Moving on, Greg says, George's storyline with Susan is also so brilliant. This is Jason Alexander at his best, completely insecure about the fact that he turned Susan gay, and yet also so intrigued by how hip she is. And then later, of course, he needs to borrow money from her. I'm not a huge fan of Susan as a character, mostly because they never give her that much comedy, but this is hands down her best episode. She knows George so well and can call out his bullshit now that she's not dating him. Yet, she's still polite. The same cannot be said for her feelings toward Kramer. The B.O. storyline and the Susan storyline are weaved so well, I'm really impressed with the pacing of this episode. Yes, okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Yes, well, I think I kind of touched on how Peter Melman gave Susan laugh lines, and that's something that Heidi Sweetberg called out. And you're right. I think this is definitely a highlight Susan episode for sure, because she gets those moments, and especially calling George out on his bullshit. I love that moment of, I know who I'm talking to. Of course you do. Because she is one of the few people besides the main four that he can't bullshit with. She knows what he's about. And that just made me think about how Heidi Sweetberg, in one of the Inside Looks for an earlier episode, talked about how people would approach her and say, why would Susan date George? And she says that, once we meet her family, the Rosses, and sort of see that background, she's like, I think that really kind of fills in the gaps there. Like, she comes from crazy. And so for her, dating George isn't that, weird. Dating someone like George isn't too far out of her wheelhouse. So, and I thought that was a brilliant interpretation of why Susan was ever with George and then gets with George later as well. I'll bring it up at the later time, but there's also a great Susan moment in the future when they're engaged, when he asks for the prenup, and that performance by Heidi Sweetberg where she just laughs and says, sure, I'll sign it. Like, it's so well done. I think she's so underrated. And I actually do love Susan's character. So I do appreciate when she kind of gets to flex this comedy muscle, which she definitely does in this episode. And when you said, the B.O. storyline and the Susan storyline are so weaved together, I think that's because this was a co-write between Peter Melman and Larry David. Larry David was a master at sort of doing that dovetailing and weaving storylines together. And then Peter Melman's just a fantastic writer. Both of them are, but I think, you're seeing that combination of great writing and the ability to kind of get everything mixed in with each other. And that just makes this such a great episode. Next, Greg says, I love horse manure is another great line from Elaine, and JLD's over-the-top delivery of it sells it. Followed later by, is it possible I'm not as attractive as I think I am? Elaine gets the best jokes in this episode, and I love how this one is delivered in such a serious way. She really is asking if she's attractive. She is a confident woman, and this out-of-her-control entity is now shaking that very confidence. Exactly. I love that delivery of the attractive line to Jerry is so serious too. It's just like, hang on a second. Is something else going on here? Am I not as attractive? Like, it's It's such a great moment. And the response, I don't think there could have been a better written response. Anything's possible. I mean, what's Jerry going to say? And I love, that's why I called out that couplet of dialogue. It's so well done. And finally, Greg says, in closing, after a couple of weeks of dreadful news in this country, it was a joy to watch my favorite Seinfeld episode. I laughed as hard as I did the first time I saw it. So perfectly executed, and JLD at her usual perfection. I agree, and yes, we do need, like I pointed out in my top of the show banter, we need those life preservers. We need those things to cling to, those happy moments, whether it's a show or watching Wimbledon, whatever it is. We need these moments to rest our brain and our blood pressure and our rage, because otherwise that's just not healthy. Thank you so much, Greg, for sending in your thoughts this week. I was excited to read them. You had mentioned before that this was your favorite episode, so I knew you'd have some great insights, and I was not wrong. If you would like to become a contributor to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. All right, my favorite Elaine moments. That moment of realization when she figures out that Carl kicked her out because she has BO. I love when her eyes get big and the way she says, "He thinks I stink." Oh, it's so good. I do want to say an honorable mention to my favorite moment is her expression after the deep cleaning of her hair and Carl saying, "It still smells." That look on her face, like just desperation, going, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening." And my final notes. This episode, it's so fun. I really enjoy all of the storylines. And I like how the main four are paired together. So it's Jerry and Elaine and George and Kramer. And, everyone seems to have pretty equal time here, and it's done really well. And I must note how I love the portrayal of Elaine as this single and sexually potent woman. There's no hint of apology or judgment with what she's doing here. I think so often when women are portrayed as sexually independent or sexually enthusiastic, there's some sort of punishment that goes along with that. But that's just, Seinfeld doesn't do that. First of all, it's not that kind of a show, but I love that even in a sitcom, they just have this independent, sexually potent woman doing her thing. And her date is thwarted because of a random BO smell that clung to her. And that same stink affected Jerry as well. So I love that there's this what I'm calling the humiliation equity. It's not that it only affected Elaine or it only affected Jerry. They both were affected by it. Eventually, George gets affected by it too, and Kramer. So there's an equity with the humiliation about the BO. So I do love that in this episode. The return of Susan is a fun surprise, and that plot brings out every insecurity and neuroses for George, just like Greg says. And it's so fun to watch that because Jason Alexander is just a master. And as Heidi Sweetberg says, she does get some punchlines in this one. So good on Peter Melman for giving that to her. I think if you're always, the straight performer, straight man, whatever you want to call it, it can get a little tiresome. So I can definitely understand for her how thrilling it would be to get some laughs. Heidi Sweetberg got to play the opposite of straight in a couple of ways in the Smelly car. You get it? All right, well, on that note, I think that's all I can say about the Smelly car. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.